Writing, the language skill you cannot afford to ignore. Out of the four language skills, writing is arguably the most important for success. We can look at this from two angles. First of all, let's look at the intrinsic importance of writing as a language skill. From an academic and professional standpoint, writing is probably the most important language skill. In schools and universities, of course, reading and listening are very important for absorbing content. But ultimately, you're assessed according to your output, which almost always involves writing. And that's especially true in American universities, where in many subjects, you're graded mostly on your writing rather than on multiple choice type tests. In any case, it's clear that in any context, writing is a very important part of your academic output and therefore crucial to how you're going to be assessed. Now, in the workplace as well, writing is a fundamental skill for success, for good performance, right? A personal example I can give you is when I worked in the international relations department at the Brazilian Court of Accounts. Being able to understand and speak Spanish and other foreign languages was very important, but it was writing, the capacity to be able to write emails, prepare reports, prepare official letters in those languages that really gave me an edge. Carleton University study revealed that about a third of people's time at work is spent just on email. So that underscores one of the ways that writing is so crucial to day-to-day work, right? Now, it's interesting to note that even socially speaking, writing is more important than ever. That's because in the past, when making new friends or romantic acquaintances, that almost always happened in person, right? But nowadays, it also happens quite a bit online. And when that happens online, it almost always begins with writing. And then later it progresses to voice contacts, video contacts, and eventually in-person encounters, pandemics permitting. So if you want to make new friends or romantic acquaintances with foreigners, I highly suggest you work on your writing, get that in top shape. Now, let's look at writing as a crucial component of the language acquisition process, generally speaking. The most important thing I want to note about this is that writing can be seen as slow motion speaking. And in that sense, it's what allows you mostly to take your receptive knowledge in a language, which is passive, right? I'm talking about comprehension, and convert it to productive, active competence in the language, which would be speaking and, of course, writing as well. This process is by not at all automatic. As a matter of fact, you study a language, you listen quite a bit, read a lot, and yet transitioning to speaking is a daunting and arduous process quite often. You know, a lot of people, this happens worldwide, they have long exposure to a foreign language. Maybe they're immigrants, for instance. And however, they don't have the opportunity or they don't make the persistent effort to convert that into productive capacity. And they reach the point where they're able to understand everything in that language perfectly, but they can't even speak a full sentence in the language. So that just goes to show there is this gap. And it's a huge gap between passive knowledge, receptive knowledge, and productive knowledge. And writing bridges that gap marvelously well. Because when you write, you have time to access your brain's storehouse of passive knowledge, all that vocabulary, and all those grammatical structures that you've picked up through your reading and your listening, and convert it to an active capacity, right? And in so doing, you create these new neural pathways that then make the next step very natural and fluid. The next step, I'm referring to spontaneous speaking, using that same grammatical and semantic knowledge. So writing is a key process in converting the passive to the active in language acquisition. Another interesting point is, after a few years, or whatever time it takes, to become a good conversationalist in a foreign language, you might begin to think prematurely that you're nearing perfection in that language. Because, after all, you talk to native speakers, they seem to get everything you're saying and they rarely correct you, right? So probably you're making all the right word choices, your grammatical mastery is impeccable, you're conjugating all the verbs, for instance, perfectly, right? However, that may not be the case, actually. It may be that your hand gestures, your smiles, and contextual clues are, number one, allowing the people you're speaking with to get your general meaning pretty well, and kind of, not making a big fuss about the mistakes that you make. Now, when you write, you lay bare your actual mastery of the language. And that's a good thing because it gives you the opportunity to become more aware of your deficiencies in the language, self-correct, and also it's an opportunity to receive corrections from a teacher, right, when you write. So, it's, in higher, in lower levels, it's that conversion that is so critical in writing. Although that happens repeatedly at all levels of proficiency. And certainly in higher levels of proficiency, this laying bare and this opportunity to see where you still need to improve is so key in writing. A last interesting advantage to writing that's pointed out in some studies is that it produces an enduring record of your ability in a language. And so you can go back to your writing at any time and see, where were you at that time. And you also have an opportunity to remember what you were thinking about, what you were interested in at that time. But that enduring record has been shown to be important in cognitive processes involved in language acquisition. So make sure you make writing a key part of your language acquisition journey. In the next videos, I'm going to give you tips on how to improve your writing in a foreign language and also a unique opportunity to prepare an essay in the language that you want to improve, be it English, French, Spanish, or Portuguese, and receive for free corrections from a native speaking teacher. And finally, the opportunity to review those corrections through an innovative game that will allow you to really assimilate and master those corrections. So stay tuned. See you next time.